The snow had buried everything but her hand. Silas Crow saw it from 20 yards out. 5 small fingers curled against the white, already going blue. December storm hit 3 weeks early. Cedar Valley hadn't seen snow like this since '79, the kind that killed cattle standing up. He dropped the feed bucket, crossed the distance in strides that punched through drifts to his thighs, knelt, dug, a girl. Couldn't be more than 7. Dark hair frozen to her cheeks, lips the color of bruised sky. One eye half open, clouded and strange, the other staring at nothing. Dead, had to be. Then she breathed. Silas gathered her up. She weighed nothing, less than a newborn calf, and turned toward the cabin. His cabin. The only light for 6 miles in any direction. Golden through the frost-rimed window. Warm. Her eyes fluttered, focused on that light, on the shape of the door, on him. Her voice came out cracked and small, barely a sound at all. Is this heaven? Silas stopped walking. The wind screamed. Snow bit his face, his chest locked up tight as a rusted hinge. He looked at her, at the light, at the life he'd stopped living 18 years ago, and smiled. First time since 1873. She was so cold she didn't shiver anymore. That's when you start dying. Silas knew hypothermia. Seen it take grown men twice her size. Drovers caught out in spring squalls. A trapper, up near Flathead, who sat down to rest and never stood again. The body quits fighting. Turns peaceful, lets go. This girl hadn't let go yet, but she was close. He kicked the cabin door open, carried her to the floor near the hearth. Not too close. Cook her blood too fast and her heart would seize. He'd seen that too. You had to bring them back slow. Patient. Like coaxing a wild thing out of the brush. The fire had burned low. He fed it kindling, then splits a pie, working the bellows until flames roared up the chimney and the room went from cold to close. Sweat prickled his neck. He ignored it. Her clothes were soaked through, stiff with ice in the folds. He hesitated, hands hovering over the buttons of her coat. She was a child, a girl child, and he was hell with it. He pulled his skinning knife from his belt and cut the fabric away. Wool dress beneath, cotton shift beneath that, all of it wet, all of it killing her. He stripped her down to nothing, averting his eyes, and wrapped her in the wool blanket from his own bed, then the quilt his mother had made 40 years ago, then his buffalo robe, the one he'd traded 3 horses for back when 3 horses meant something. She disappeared inside the layers, just a pale face in a nest of hide and cloth. He boiled water, soaked rags, pressed them to her chest, her neck, her wrists where the blood ran close to skin. Her fingers had gone white, bad sign, but when he rubbed them between his palms, color started creeping back, pink beneath the nails, life, stubbornly returning. Don't you die. His voice sounded strange in the room. Hadn't spoken aloud in months. Don't you dare die in my house. The night stretched long. Silas sat in the hardback chair across from the fire, watching her breathe. Shallow at first, then deeper as the hours crawled past. Her fever spiked near midnight. He could see it in the flush climbing her cheeks, hear it in the small moans she made without waking. She talked in her sleep. Fragments. Nonsense. Mama, don't let go. So cold, Mama, so cold. Find the light. You said find the light. He didn't move. Didn't comfort her. Wouldn't know how. On the mantel above the fireplace, the charred wooden horse caught the glow of the flames. One side smooth and painted, a red saddle, a black mane, eyes he'd carved himself with the tip of his knife. The other side black and bubbled, wood grain turned to scale. Silas looked at it, looked away. Some things you don't touch, not even with your eyes. Dawn came gray and grudging through the frost on the windows. Her fever broke an hour before first light. He knew because her breathing changed, slower, steadier, the sound of someone sleeping instead of someone fighting. The color in her cheeks faded from fever red to something closer to living. She'd make it. Silas stood. His knees popped, his back ached, and his eyes felt packed with sand. He walked to the window and scraped a circle in the frost with his thumbnail. Still snowing. Drifts up to the porch rail. No riding to town today. Maybe not tomorrow either. He was stuck with her. Or she was stuck with him. Behind him she stirred. He heard the blankets shift, heard a small intake of breath. You ain't an angel. He turned. She was sitting up in the nest of blankets, dark hair wild around her face, studying him with those mismatched eyes, one clear and sharp, one clouded like milk and water. Angels don't got beards, she said. Or smell like horses. He almost laughed, caught it just in time. Go back to sleep. I've been sleeping. She looked around the cabin, at the rough-hewn walls, the iron stove, the single window with its circle of cleared frost, at him. Where am I? My place. What's your place called? Don't got a name. Everything's got a name. She tilted her head, studying him the way a bird studies a worm. Do you got a name? Or just a face? Name's Silas. Silas what? Crow. Like the bird? Like my father. She considered this. Then, I'm Eliza. Eliza Ann. Ann was my grandmother, but I never met her on account of she died before I was born. Mama said she was pretty. Mama was pretty too. Was. Silas caught the word but didn't press. You hungry, Eliza Ann? I could eat a horse. She glanced toward the window. Not your horses, though. I ain't met them yet. This time he didn't catch the laugh. It came out short and rough, more like a cough than anything. Her eyes went wide. Then she smiled. A small thing. Barely there, but real. You should do that more, she said. Laugh, I mean. It makes your face look less scary. Silas turned back to the window. Outside, the snow kept falling. The world kept shrinking. He thought, I saved her life tonight. And then, unbidden, what if that's not the whole story? She was still watching him. He could feel it. That one clear eye cutting through 18 years of silence like it was nothing but smoke. What if she'd saved something in him, too? He shook the thought loose, walked to the stove. Started making oatmeal for 2? 3 days. That's how long before the snow would let him take her anywhere. 3 days was enough to ruin everything. Silas knew it the way he knew weather, the way he knew when a horse was about to spook. Some things you feel in the bones before your mind catches up. This girl, Eliza Ann, with her one good eye and her mouth that never stopped, she was going to cost him something. He just didn't know what yet. First morning, after the fever broke, he woke to find her standing at the window, blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a shawl, breath fogging the glass. Snow's still coming down, she said without turning. Looks like sugar from a torn sack. He grunted, swung his legs off the cot, felt the cold floor through his wool socks. You sleep okay? Some. She traced a finger through the condensation, drew a lopsided star. Dreamed about Mama. She was calling me, but I couldn't find her. Silas didn't answer. What was there to say? He crossed to the stove, stirred the coals, added kindling. The morning ritual. Same as every morning for 18 years, except now there was someone watching him do it. You hungry? Always. He made oatmeal. Added a spoon of molasses from the tin. Hadn't done that for himself in years. But she was thin as a fence rail and needed building up. Set the bowl on the table. Pointed at the chair. She sat. Ate like she hadn't seen food in a week. Maybe she hadn't. This is good, she said between bites. Mama used to make it with honey, but we ran out of honey in October and couldn't get more because... Stopped. Spoon, halfway to her mouth. Something flickered across her face. Because why? Because we were traveling. She looked down at the bowl. Just traveling. Silas let it go. Wasn't his business. Wasn't going to be his business. 3 days, and she'd be the sheriff's problem, the territory's problem, anyone's problem but his. He stood by the window while she finished. Watched the snow pile against the fence posts. Watched the world turn white and quiet and still. By afternoon, she'd mapped every corner of the cabin. It wasn't big. One room, mostly. A curtained-off space where he slept. A kitchen area with the stove and a dry sink. A table, 2 chairs, a chest for clothes, the fireplace with its stone hearth, the mantel above it. That was the sum of Silas Crow's life, and she inventoried it like a banker counting coins. You got a lot of books, she said, crouching by the shelf near his cot. Can you read all of them? Most. Mama taught me some reading. I know all my letters and some words. Cat, dog, the, and. She pulled out a volume, squinted at the spine. What's this one? Bible. Oh. She slid it back carefully. We had one of those. Mama read it to me sometimes. The stories with the animals, mostly. Noah and the big boat. Ark. That's what I said, big boat. She moved along the shelf, fingers trailing the spines. You got any stories? Not God stories, regular ones, with adventures and such. Silas nodded toward the far end. Cooper, Scott, some others. She pulled one out, opened it to the middle, frowned at the dense text. Will you read to me? Later, I mean, when there's nothing else to do? He should have said no. Should have kept the distance, maintained the silence, remembered that she'd be gone in 3 days, and there was no point in starting something that wouldn't finish. Maybe, he said. She smiled, like he'd promised her the moon. He took her to the barn that afternoon. She needed clothes. Hers were ruined, cut to pieces, and still damp despite hanging by the fire. He found an old shirt of his, big enough to be a dress, on her, and cinched it with a length of rope. Found wool socks that went up past her knees. His winter coat, the spare one, hung to her ankles and made her look like a child playing dress-up in her father's things. She didn't complain. Just rolled up the sleeves and said, I look like a scarecrow that got caught in a tornado. Whilst the barn was 30 yards from the cabin. 30 yards through snow that came up to her waist and his thighs. He carried her most of the way, her arms around his neck, her breath warm against his collar. You smell like smoke, she said. So wood smoke. I know, I like it. Mama always said, a house ain't a home without a fire. Inside the barn, the air was warmer, body heat from the animals, hay insulating the walls. His two mares stamped and snorted at the visitors. The old gelding just swung his head around and stared. Oh, Eliza breathed. Oh, they're beautiful. She wriggled out of his arms, dropped into the hay, and walked straight to the nearest mare. Stood on her toes to reach the horse's nose. Hey there, pretty girl. Hey now, I ain't gonna hurt you. I'm just cold and small and I wanted to say hello. The mare, a bay named Ruth, though he hadn't called her that aloud in years, lowered her head and snuffled at Eliza's hair. The girl laughed, pure and clean, like water over stones. She likes me, Silas, she likes me. She likes everybody, don't mean nothing. But he watched the way Ruth's ears pricked forward, the way the old horse leaned into the small hand stroking her neck. Animals knew things. They could smell sickness, sense storms, tell the difference between a threat and a friend. Ruth hadn't leaned into anyone's touch since Mary died. She named them all within the hour. Ruth became Lady because she walks like she knows she's pretty. The other mare, a gray with a black mane, became Ghost. The gelding, stubborn, half-deaf, 20 years old if he was a day, she called Grandfather. He looks like he's seen things, she explained, stroking his nose. Important things, sad things, but he's still standing. Silas grunted, kept forking hay into the stalls. What's his real name? Don't got one. You can't just not name a horse. He knows who he is. Don't need me to tell him. She considered this. That's the saddest thing I ever heard. In the corner, half buried in old hay, something moved. Eliza gasped, then laughed as a cat emerged, orange and battle-scarred, one ear torn, eyes narrowed against the light. You got a cat. He ain't mine. Just lives here. What's his name? Cat? That ain't a name. Works for him. She scooped the animal up before Silas could warn her. The cat was feral, half wild, had scratched him bloody more than once when he'd tried to, but it didn't scratch. Just hung there in her arms, blinking slowly, and then, God help him, started to purr. I'm going to call him Bishop, Eliza announced. He looks holy. Silas snorted. He looks like he's been in a dozen fights and lost half of them. That's what makes him holy. He keeps trying. She carried the cat back toward the cabin, talking to it the whole way, explaining that he was going to live inside now and eat proper food and have a warm place to sleep. The cat didn't protest, just kept purring. Silas watched them go, the small girl in the too big coat, the battle-worn cat in her arms, snow falling around them like grace, something twisted in his chest. He ignored it. That night, she woke screaming. He was there before he knew he was moving, out of the chair, across the room, standing over her nest of blankets while she thrashed and sobbed and called for her mother. Eliza, Eliza. Wake up now. Her eyes flew open, wild, seeing something that wasn't there. Mama, she fell, and I couldn't. You're safe. He kept his voice low, steady, the way he'd talk to a spooked horse. You're in my cabin, storm's outside. You're warm, you're safe. She focused on him, on the room, on the fire crackling low in the hearth. Sorry. Her voice was small, shattered. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Nothing to be sorry for. She pulled the blanket tighter, shivering now, though the room wasn't cold. Do you get nightmares? He didn't answer right away. Thought about lying, decided against it. Used to. What stopped them? The fire popped. Sparks swirled up the chimney. Nothing stops them. You just get tired of waking up. She looked at him a long time, then nodded, slow, like he'd said something that made a terrible kind of sense. I'm tired, she whispered. Then sleep. She did, and Silas sat in the chair beside her, watching the fire, listening to her breathe, not sleeping himself, not able to, but there, present. In the morning she wouldn't mention it, neither would he, but she'd remember that he stayed. By the fourth day she'd started drawing on his walls. He should have stopped her, he didn't. It began with charcoal from the fireplace, a chunk she'd fished from the ash bucket while he was out, checking on the horses. When he came back in, stamping snow from his boots, she was kneeling by the far wall, tongue poking between her teeth, sketching something with intense concentration. What are you doing? Drawing. She didn't look up. The walls are boring. They need pictures. He should have said, those are my walls. That's my charcoal. You don't mark up a man's house without asking. Instead, he watched her pull a crooked line into the shape of a horse. Ghost, he realized, with her black mane and gray body. Not half bad, for a child working with burned wood on rough timber. You done this before? Mama taught me. She could draw anything. Birds, flowers, people's faces. The charcoal paused. She drew me once, made me look pretty. You are pretty. The words came out before he could catch them. Eliza looked up, surprised. He felt heat climb his neck. I mean, you ain't ugly, that's all. She smiled. The real kind, the one that crinkled her clouded eye. You're not ugly either, just big and hairy. He grunted, turned away to hang up his coat. Behind him, she kept drawing. By evening, the wall held ghost lady, grandfather, and a lopsided bishop with too many whiskers. Below them, in careful letters, Eliza's barn. He didn't tell her to wash it off. The next morning, she found the horse. Silas was at the stove, stirring oatmeal, when he heard her gasp. He turned. She was standing near the fireplace, neck craned back, staring at the mantel, at the charred wooden toy that sat there. What's that? His hand tightened on the spoon. Nothing. It's a horse. She rose on her toes, reaching. Her fingers brushed the air an inch below it. A little wooden horse. But it's burned on one side. How come it's burned? Don't touch that. His voice came out wrong, sharp, the same voice he'd used with ranch hands who didn't follow orders. The voice that had made men twice her size step back. Eliza flinched, lowered her hand, looked at him with those mismatched eyes, the clear one hurt, the clouded one unreadable. I wasn't going to break it. I know. He forced his grip to loosen on the spoon, forced his voice lower. Just don't. That ain't for touching. She nodded slowly, stepped away from the hearth, went to sit at the table, small and silent, watching him with a wariness that hadn't been there before. He'd scared her. First time since that first night. The oatmeal was burning. He didn't care. She didn't ask about the horse again. But he caught her looking at it. Quick glances when she thought he wasn't watching. Cataloging. Filing it away. She was smart, this girl. Smarter than most grown folks he'd known. She understood that some doors stayed closed for a reason. She just didn't understand why. Neither did he most days. Why he kept the damn thing. Why he couldn't throw it out, couldn't bury it with the rest. Couldn't let it go. 18 years of looking at that burned wood every morning. 18 years of remembering. After breakfast, she went back to her drawings. A new section of wall now, further from the fireplace, away from the mantel. Safer ground. He watched her work. Watched the charcoal move in her small hand. She was drawing a woman, long hair, soft face. The kind of face you'd remember even if you only saw it once. She worked slowly, carefully, getting the eyes right, the curve of the mouth. That your mama? Eliza nodded, didn't speak. She's pretty. Was. The charcoal kept moving. She was pretty. Silas sat down across the room. Didn't push, just waited. She had a singing voice, Eliza said after a while. Like birds in the morning. She used to sing me to sleep every night. Even when she was tired, even when we didn't have food, she always sang. What did she sing? Old songs. Church songs mostly. And one about a river. Down in the valley so low. Her voice cracked. She stopped drawing. I can't remember all the words anymore. It's only been 3 weeks and I'm already forgetting. You won't forget. How do you know? Because he still remembered Mary's laugh. Eli's smell, milk and hay and something sweet. The weight of his son in his arms, the exact weight, even after 18 years. Some things stay, he said. The important things, they stay. Eliza looked at him, then back at her drawing. Tell me something important, about someone you lost. The fire crackled. Bishop yawned from his nest by the hearth. Silas should have said no, should have kept the door closed, should have remembered that she'd be gone in 2 days, and none of this would matter. Her name was Mary, he said. He didn't tell her everything. Couldn't, but he told her enough. Mary was my wife. We built this cabin together, her and me. Took 2 summers and most of our savings. She wanted the window facing east so she could watch the sun come up. Said it was better than church. Eliza had set down her charcoal, listening with her whole body, the way children do. We had a boy, Eli. Named him after her father. Silas's voice caught. He pressed through. He was 6 when there was a fire. He couldn't say more, didn't need to. Eliza's eyes went to the mantle, to the burned horse. That was his. I carved it for him. For his birthday, he carried it everywhere. Slept with it under his pillow. And it's the only thing that survived. Silas nodded, didn't trust his voice. Eliza stood, walked toward him, stopped an arm's length away, the same distance she'd kept since he shouted at her. I'm sorry, she said. About Eli, about Mary. I'm sorry you had to be alone so long. He looked at her. The small, half-blind orphan girl who'd nearly frozen to death in his barn 4 days ago, offering him comfort, giving what she barely had herself. I'm sorry about your mama. I know. She bit her lip. I miss her so much it feels like my chest has a hole in it. Like someone scooped out my insides with a spoon. That's about right. Does it get better? Honest answer? No, it didn't get better. It just got quieter. The hole stayed the same size. You just built walls around it, rooms you didn't enter, doors you didn't open. But she was 7, and she was looking at him like he had answers. It gets different, he said. Not better, different. You learn how to carry it. She thought about this, nodded slowly, like a rock in your pocket. Something like that. Mama used to say grief was love with nowhere to go. She looked at her drawing, at the woman with the long hair and the soft face. I got a lot of love with nowhere to go. Silas felt something crack in his chest. Not break, just crack. A fissure in the wall he'd built 18 years ago. You could put some of it here, he said. While you're here, I mean. Cabin could use some love. Been empty a long time. She smiled. Small and sad and real. Okay. Running Bear came in the afternoon. Silas heard the horse before he saw it, the soft crunch of hooves on crusted snow, the particular gait of a rider who knew the land. He stepped onto the porch with his rifle, relaxed when he saw the familiar figure. You still breathing, Crow? Apparently, Running Bear dismounted. He was dressed for deep winter, elk hide and wool, a fur hat that made him look like a graying bear. His eyes went past Silas to the window where Eliza stood watching. And this one? Found her in the storm. She'll be gone when the snow clears. Running Bear climbed the porch steps, moved past Silas into the cabin without waiting for invitation. He'd earned that right years ago, helped Silas bury his family, helped him survive the first winter, after when he'd stopped eating, stopped caring, stopped everything. Inside, he studied the walls, the drawings, the horses and the cat and the woman with long hair. She makes art. She makes a mess. Same thing. Running Bear crossed to Eliza, knelt so his eyes were level with hers, studied her face, the clouded eye, the sharp chin, the wariness that never fully left. How did you lose it? The eye? Fever. When I was little. Mama said I almost died. But you didn't. No, sir. He smiled, the first warm smile Silas had seen him give a white person in years. The half-blind see more than the fully sighted. Remember that. He stood, turned to Silas. His face changed, became the face of a man who saw too much and said too little. The child sees what you hide. Children always do. Then he traded tobacco for oats, nodded once, and left into the fading light. That night, Silas kept his promise. They sat by the fire, Eliza wrapped in blankets, Bishop purring in her lap. Silas in the hard-back chair with a book open on his knee. The Last of the Mohicans. She'd picked it because of the title. I don't know what a Mohican is, she'd said, but it sounds important. He read slowly, gave the characters different voices, deeper for the men, softer for the women, rough and strange for the natives in the way Cooper had written them. She listened with her whole body, eyes wide, lips parted. When he stopped after the first chapter, she said, More. Tomorrow. Promise? He looked at her, at the fire, at the burned horse on the mantel. Promise. She smiled, settled deeper into her blankets, closed her eyes. Silas? Yeah? Why you being nice to me? He didn't answer right away. Thought about lies he could tell, decided against them. I ain't nice. Yes, you are. Her voice was sleepy now, drifting. You just don't like admitting it. She was asleep before he could argue. He sat in the chair a long time, watching the fire, watching her breathe, feeling that crack in his chest widen just a little more. 2 days until the snow cleared. 2 days until she was gone. He wasn't ready. The sky cleared on the 5th day. That's when things started to break. Silas woke before dawn, same as always, but something was different. The light through the frost on the window, brighter, sharper. He scraped a circle with his thumbnail and saw it. Blue sky, the first in nearly a week. Stars still fading in the west, but the clouds had moved on. The storm was over. He stood at that window a long time. Behind him, Eliza slept. Bishop curled at her feet. The fire had burned low overnight, embers glowing orange in the gray ash. On the walls, her drawings watched him. Horses and cats and a woman with long hair. On the mantel, the charred horse watched too. Blue sky meant passable roads by tomorrow. Maybe today, if the sun held and the temperature climbed. Blue sky meant riding into Cedar Valley, meant Sheriff Cole, meant orphanage trains and territorial wards in proper channels. Blue sky meant she was leaving. He put on his coat, went out to the barn, fed the horses in silence, stood in the cold until his fingers ached, watching his breath plume white, trying to feel nothing. It didn't work. When he came back inside, she was awake, sitting at the table, blanket around her shoulders, watching him with those mismatched eyes. Storm's over, she said. Not a question. Yeah? I saw the sky. It's pretty. It is. She looked down at her hands, small and pale against the rough wood of the table. Does that mean I have to go? Silas hung up his coat, took his time with it, adjusted the collar, brushed off snow that wasn't there. Roads should be clear by tomorrow. That's not what I asked. He turned. She was still looking at her hands. There's a place in Helena, he said. Territorial orphanage. They take in children who need, he stopped. The words tasted like ash. It's warm, they'll feed you. Find you a family, maybe, a real one. No, I don't want a real one. Eliza, I want to stay here. She looked up now. Her good eye was bright, wet. With you and the horses and Bishop, I can help, I can cook, Mama taught me some, I can clean. I can be quiet when you need quiet. I know how to be quiet, Silas. I've had lots of practice. Something twisted in his chest. He turned away, looked at the fire. It ain't about what you can do. Then what's it about? It's about what's proper, what's right. A man alone with a child. People talk. Sheriff Cole already knows you're here. He'll come asking questions. And I ain't, he stopped, breathed. I ain't equipped for this. For what? For raising a child, for being what you need. You don't know what I need. He spun around. I know I'm a 50-year-old man who talks to horses more than people. I know I haven't been to town in 4 months. I know I wake up some mornings and can't remember why I'm still breathing. That ain't a life for a little girl. That ain't... He stopped. She was crying. Silent tears streaming down her cheeks, but her face was still. Controlled. Like she'd learned long ago that noise didn't help, that crying loud only made things worse. Eliza... It's fine. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. I understand. I'm used to leaving places. Mama and I left lots of places. That ain't what I said it's fine. She stood up, squared her shoulders. 7 years old and already learning how to build walls. I'm going to say goodbye to the horses. She walked past him, pulled on the too big coat, opened the door to the white glare of the snow and the blue vault of the sky. Eliza, wait. The door closed behind her. Silas stood in the empty cabin. The fire crackled. Bishop meowed, confused, patting toward the door where she'd gone. He'd done the right thing. He knew he had. A child needed stability, school, church, other children, a mother or a father, or at least someone who knew what they were doing. Not a broken man in a cabin full of ghosts. He'd done the right thing. So why did it feel like he'd just put his fist through something that couldn't be fixed? He gave her an hour, told himself it was kindness, let her grieve, let her say goodbye to the animals, let her have her space, but really it was cowardice. He couldn't face those silent tears again. Couldn't watch her build walls while he stood there holding the hammer. When he finally went to the barn, she wasn't with the horses. Eliza? No answer. The mares shuffled in their stalls. The gelding swung his head toward Silas, ears flat. Something was wrong. Eliza! He searched the barn, the hayloft, behind the feed bins. Nothing. Panic rose in his throat. She'd wandered into the snow, gotten lost. The drifts were still deep in places. She could fall through a crust and... Then he saw the tracks. Small, boot prints, leading from the barn, not toward the cabin, but toward the ridge. Toward the 3 crosses. Toward the graves he'd never shown her, never mentioned, tried to pretend didn't exist. He ran. He found her standing at the crosses. She'd made it farther than he would have thought possible. A quarter-mile uphill through snow that came to her thighs. Her face was red with cold, her breath coming in gasps, but she wasn't crying anymore. Just standing there, looking at the names carved into the wood. Mary Crow, Eli Crow, 1873, and the 3rd cross, the empty one. The one he'd driven into the frozen ground 18 years ago, waiting for a death that never came. Eliza. He was breathing hard, more from fear than exertion. What are you doing up here? I wanted to meet them. Her voice was calm, eerily calm. You told me about Mary and Eli. I wanted to see where they were. You shouldn't be here. It's too cold. The snow's too deep. Why is there 3? He stopped. She pointed at the empty cross, the one with no name. 2 graves, 3 crosses. Why? The wind picked up, blew snow across the ridge like smoke. Silas felt it cut through his coat, through his skin, through all the walls he'd built. That one's mine. Eliza looked at him. But you ain't dead. No. Then why... She stopped. Understanding moved across her face like a shadow. Oh. He couldn't meet her eyes. Looked at the mountains, instead. At the snow. At anything but this small girl who saw too much. You were waiting, she said. Waiting to die so you could be with them. Eliza... But you didn't die. You're still here. She walked toward him. Snow up to her waist, struggling with each step, but she kept coming. 18 years. You've been waiting 18 years. Stop. Why didn't you just do it yourself? The question hit him like a fist. He staggered back. No one had ever asked him that. No one had ever dared. Were you scared? Or did you think they wouldn't want you? In heaven, I mean. Did you think Mary and Eli wouldn't want you if you did it yourself? His knees gave out. He sank into the snow, kneeling in the white, eye level with her now. I don't know, he whispered. I don't know why, I just couldn't. Every morning I woke up and I couldn't, so I kept waiting, kept hoping winter would take me, sickness, a fall from a horse, something that would end it without me having to choose. Eliza stood in front of him, reached out, put her small, cold hand on his cheek. But something else happened instead. What? I came. He looked at her. At this tiny, fierce, half-blind orphan who'd walked through a blizzard and found his light, who'd named his horses and adopted his cat and drawn pictures on his walls, who'd asked questions no one else dared to ask and seen things he'd spent 18 years hiding. You came, he repeated. And I asked if it was heaven, and you smiled. You smiled, Silas. And her hand was still on his face. Her good eye was bright with something that might have been anger or might have been love. Maybe that wasn't an accident. Maybe I was supposed to find you. Maybe we're both supposed to stop waiting. The wind howled. Snow swirled around them. The three crosses stood silent witness. I'm scared, he said. First time he'd admitted it out loud. To anyone. Ever. I'm scared if I let myself care about you, I'll lose you too. And I can't survive that again. I know. She moved closer, small body pressed against his, arms around his neck, holding on. I'm scared too, but I'm more scared of being alone, aren't you? He wrapped his arms around her, held her tight. This small, fierce girl who'd walked through death to find him. Yeah, he whispered. Yeah, I am. They stayed like that a long time. Two broken people holding each other on a ridge full of graves, while the wind sang and the snow fell and the sun climbed higher in the clearing sky. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't healing. Not yet, but it was a start. The sheriff came with the thaw. Silas knew it was coming. Didn't make it easier. 2 days after the ridge. 2 days of something fragile growing between them. Not quite peace, not quite family, but something. She'd stopped asking if she could stay. He'd stopped talking about Helena. They existed in a space outside of time, outside of decisions, reading by the fire at night, tending the horses together in the mornings, pretending the world beyond the snow didn't exist. But it did. Silas heard the hoofbeats first. Late morning, sun-bright on the melting drifts, icicles dripping from the cabin eaves like the world was weeping. He was splitting wood by the porch when the sound reached him. Steady, purposeful, the gait of a man who knew where he was going and why. He set down the axe, wiped his hands on his trousers, waited. Sheriff Emmett Cole emerged from the tree line on his bay mare, clean-shaved, as always. Coat brushed, hat squared, badge catching the light. A man who believed in appearances, in proper channels, in the law. He reined up 10 yards from the porch, nodded once. Silas. Emmett, heard you had some excitement during the storm. Word travels. Word always travels. The sheriff's eyes moved past Silas to the cabin window, to the small face watching from inside. That her? That's her, Cole dismounted. Tied his horse to the porch rail with the easy efficiency of a man who'd done it 10,000 times. Climbed the steps, stood level with Silas, though he had to look up to meet his eyes. You know why I'm here? I can guess. There's a proper way to handle this, Silas. Territorial law is clear on orphans, on wards of the state, on... She's not a ward of anything. She's a child. She's an unclaimed child. No parents, no kin, no documentation. Cole's voice was patient, reasonable, the voice of a man explaining something obvious to someone slow. That makes her the territory's responsibility. There's an orphanage in Helena. They'll take care of her. Find her a family, a proper family. And if I want to keep her? The sheriff's eyebrows rose. Genuine surprise. You? Me. Silas. Cole took off his hat, ran a hand through his thinning hair. You live alone. In the mountains. You haven't been to church in, 15 years? You don't have a wife. You barely talk to people. Half the valley thinks you're touched in the head, and the other half is just plain scared of you. So? So you're not exactly what the territory considers suitable guardianship. He put the hat back on. I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because it's true. A child needs stability, structure, community. Not, he gestured at the cabin, at the empty white stretching in every direction. Not this. Silas felt the familiar anger rising. The hot, tight feeling in his chest that used to come before bar fights, before he stopped going to bars, before he stopped going anywhere at all. She needs someone who gives a damn about her. That's what she needs. And you do? Give a damn. Cole's eyes were sharp now, assessing. You barely knew she existed a week ago. Now suddenly you're ready to play father? I'm not playing anything. Then what are you doing? Silas didn't answer. He didn't have words for it. For the way she'd walked through a blizzard and found his light. For the way she'd named his horses and adopted his cat and seen the empty cross on the ridge and not run away. For the way she'd held him in the snow and said maybe we're both supposed to stop waiting. Cole waited. When no answer came, he sighed. I'm not the enemy here, Silas. I'm trying to do right by that girl. Same as you, I expect. We just disagree on what right looks like. Your version of right puts her in a building with strangers. Trains her west or east to whoever'll take her. Treats her like cargo to be shipped. My version of right follows the law. The law? Silas almost spat the word. The law didn't stop my family from burning. The law didn't bring them back. The law doesn't know a damn thing about what that girl needs. Cole's face hardened. Careful, Silas. Or what? You'll arrest me, lock me up? What happens to her then? Silence. The icicles dripped. The horses shifted in the barn. Inside the cabin, Eliza hadn't moved from the window. I'm going to talk to her, Cole said finally. Ask her some questions alone. No, it's not a request. He stepped toward the door. You can stand here and glare at me, or you can go tend your animals. Either way, I'm going inside. Silas didn't move. For a long moment, the two men stood chest to chest, the lawman and the giant, the badge and the silence. 18 years of solitude pressed against the weight of proper channels and territorial authority. Then Silas stepped aside. He watched the sheriff walk into his cabin, watched the door close behind him, watched Eliza's face disappear from the window as she turned to meet the man who'd come to take her away. He picked up the axe, started splitting wood again. Swinging hard enough to bury the blade 3 inches into the stump, over and over, wood cracking, sweat running, the sound of something being destroyed because he couldn't stand the silence. Cole was inside for 20 minutes, 20 minutes of wood splitting, 20 minutes of listening for sounds through the walls, voices too muffled to make out, no shouting, no crying, just the low murmur of questions and answers. 20 minutes of imagining what she was saying, what he was asking, what would happen next. When the door finally opened, Silas had a pile of kindling big enough to last a month. Cole stepped onto the porch. His face was different now, still professional, still lawman proper. But something underneath had shifted, something he was trying to hide. Well, she's a remarkable child. Cole's voice was quieter than before. Smart, brave, been through more than most grown men could handle. I know. She told me about her mother, about the wagon, about walking through the storm. He paused. She told me about the ridge, about what she found there. Silas's jaw tightened. That's none of your business. Maybe not, but it tells me something about you, Silas, about what you've been carrying. Cole looked out at the mountains, at the snow, at the vast, white emptiness that had been Silas's only companion for 18 years. She thinks you saved her, but she also thinks she saved you. Says you smiled when she asked if this was heaven. Says it was the first time she'd seen you smile. What's your point? My point is, Cole stopped, took a breath. My point is that sometimes the law isn't enough. Sometimes it doesn't account for what people need. What they really need. Hope flickered in Silas's chest. Dangerous. Fragile. What are you saying? I'm saying I need to think about this. I'm saying I'm not taking her today. Cole walked down the steps, untied his horse, swung into the saddle. I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe the day after. There's paperwork to consider. Procedures. But I'm not... He shook his head. I'm not sure the orphanage is the right answer. Not for her. Maybe not for you either. He tipped his hat, turned his horse toward the trail. Emmett. The sheriff paused, looked back. Thank you. Cole didn't smile, but something in his face softened. Don't thank me yet. I haven't decided anything. I'm just thinking. He rode away. Silas watched until he disappeared into the trees. She was sitting by the fire when he came inside. Bishop in her lap. Face calm. Too calm. What did you tell him? The truth. She stroked the cat. Didn't look up. About Mama. About finding you. About the ridge. You told him about the third cross? He asked why you lived alone. I told him you were waiting to die. Then I told him you stopped waiting. Silas sank into the chair across from her. His legs felt hollow. His chest felt full. That's private, Eliza. You don't tell strangers, but Jay... He's not a stranger. He's the law. She looked up now. Her good eye was fierce. And I needed him to understand, to see what I see. Oh, what do you see? A man who is dead inside, who's trying to come back to life, who needs a reason to keep going. She set the cat down, stood up, walked toward him. I'm that reason, Silas, whether you like it or not, and I wasn't going to let him take me without a fight. He stared at her. This 7-year-old girl who'd survived a blizzard, buried her mother, walked to his doorstep and asked if she'd reached heaven. You fought for me? Of course I did. She stood in front of his chair, arms crossed, chin lifted. You fought for me too. I heard you. Through the window. Telling him the law doesn't know anything. Telling him... Her voice cracked. The first crack he'd seen since the sheriff arrived. You told him you want to keep me. I do. The words came out before he could stop them. Simple. True. Terrifying. I do want to keep you. I just don't know if I'm allowed, if I'm equipped. She said the word like it tasted sour. You keep saying that, like raising a child is something you need a certificate for. Maybe you do. Maybe there's a right way and a wrong way, and I don't know the difference. My mama didn't know the difference either. She made mistakes, lots of them. But she loved me, and that was enough. Eliza climbed into his lap, uninvited, unapologetic, settled against his chest like she belonged there. Love is enough, Silas? You just have to stop being scared of it. He didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do with his hands, with his arms, with this small warm weight pressed against him like a promise. So he just held her. My mama gave me her coat, Eliza said quietly. The night of the wagon, when we went over the cliff, she was hurt bad, and the snow was coming down, and I was crying because I didn't know what to do, and she took off her coat and put it on me, and she said, her voice broke, the first real break, tears sliding down her cheeks hot against his shirt. She said, find the light, baby. Find the light and don't stop walking. Silas closed his eyes, felt the weight of her, the heat of her tears, the shape of a grief that matched his own. And you found it. I found you. She looked up at him, face wet, eyes fierce. She gave me her last hour so I could live. She froze so I could find you. And I'm not going to waste that. I'm not going to let some sheriff put me on a train so her dying meant nothing. He held her tighter. This girl who carried her mother's sacrifice like a stone in her pocket, who understood loss the way he understood it, who'd walked through the valley of the shadow and come out the other side. Still fierce, still fighting. I won't let that happen, he said. I promise. You mean it? He thought about Mary, about Eli, about the empty cross on the ridge that he'd put up 18 years ago and finally torn down. I mean it. She buried her face in his chest. He felt her body shake with silent sobs, the grief she'd been holding since the wagon went over, since her mother stopped breathing, since she started walking through the snow toward a light she wasn't sure was real. He let her cry, didn't try to stop it, just held her and let the fire burn and let the silence fill the cabin like a prayer. Outside, the sun moved lower, the shadows lengthened, the icicles dripped their slow melt. Tomorrow the sheriff would come back. Tomorrow there would be decisions, confrontations, choices that couldn't be unmade. But tonight there was just this, a broken man and a broken girl, holding each other by the fire, learning how to carry their stones together. It wasn't heaven, but it was close enough. She slept by the fire. He walked to the ridge. 3 crosses waited in the snow. The night was clear, cold enough to freeze the melt from the day, turning the snow to crust that crunched under his boots. Stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. No moon yet. It would rise later, fat and yellow over the eastern peaks. For now, just starlight and silence and the shape of his breath in the dark. He didn't bring a lantern. Didn't need one. He'd walked this path so many times he could do it blind. Up through the stand of pines where the snow thinned under the branches. Across the open meadow where the drifts came to his knees. Up the final slope to the ridge where he'd buried everything that mattered. 2 crosses now, not 3. The hole where the third one had stood was already filling with snow. By spring, there'd be no sign it had ever been there. 18 years of waiting, erased by one afternoon with a girl who asked questions no one else dared to ask. He knelt between Mary and Eli. The wood was weathered, the names worn, but still readable. He'd carved them himself, the day after the fire, while his hands were still blistered and his eyes were still blind with smoke. Carved them because he couldn't speak, couldn't cry, could only work the knife into the grain and let the letters say what his mouth couldn't. I don't know what to do. His voice sounded strange in the stillness, thin, old, a voice that hadn't talked to anyone but a child, and a cat, and a feral horse for the better part of 2 decades. There's a girl. You'd like her, Mary. She's got your stubbornness, your fire. She looks at me like she can see right through the walls I built, and she doesn't flinch at what she finds. He laughed, soft and broken. Eli would have loved her. They'd have been friends, gotten into trouble together, driven me crazy. The wind picked up, moved through the pines below, making them whisper. She lost her mama. Same way I lost you. Fire for me, cold for her, but the same damn thing. Someone dying so someone else could live. Someone left behind to carry it. He pressed his palm against Eli's cross. The wood was ice cold through his glove. I've been carrying you for 18 years, son, both of you. And I thought if I kept carrying, if I never let go, then maybe I was still your father. Maybe I was still Mary's husband. Maybe I was still something other than a man who left a lamp burning and came home to ash. His throat closed. He waited until it opened again. But this girl asks me questions. She asked why there were 3 crosses when there were only 2 graves. She asked if I was waiting to die. And I couldn't lie to her. She sees too much. Like Running Bear says, the half-blind see more than the sighted. He looked up at the stars, at the vast, cold, indifferent sky that had watched him bury his family and build his cabin, and spend 18 years pretending to be alive while something inside him stayed frozen. I'm scared, Mary. I'm so damn scared. If I let her in, if I let myself love her, and then I lose her too, he couldn't finish. The words stuck in his chest like a bone. But another voice finished for him. A voice from memory. Mary's voice, the way she used to sound when he came home worried about the cattle, about the weather, about money, about everything. Silas Crow, you're the biggest man in the territory and the biggest coward I ever met. You think loving something means you own it? You think holding tight means it can't slip away? Love ain't about keeping, it's about giving. And if you're too scared to give, then what's the point of having a heart at all? He smiled. First time he'd heard her voice in years. First time, it didn't make him want to put a bullet in his skull. You always did know how to set me straight. He stood, knees aching, back stiff, but something looser in his chest. Like a knot that had been pulled tight for 18 years was finally starting to fray. He walked the ridge for a long time. Not toward anything, just walking. Letting his legs move while his mind turned over and over like a stone in a river. He thought about the fire, about the lamp he'd left burning because Mary was sick and the cabin was cold and he needed to ride to town for medicine. About the wind that came up sudden, the way wind does in the mountains, and knocked the lamp from the table. About the hay stored too close to the door because he'd been lazy, because he'd meant to move it, because there was always tomorrow. There wasn't always tomorrow. That was the lesson. The only lesson that mattered. He thought about Eliza, about her one good eye, and her sharp tongue, and her drawings on his walls. About the way she'd curled against him by the fire and cried for her mother and told him love was enough if you stopped being scared of it. 7 years old, he thought. 7 years old, and she knows things I didn't learn in 50. He thought about the sheriff, about proper channels and territorial law, in the orphanage in Helena, where they'd put her on a train and send her somewhere far away, where she'd become a number in a ledger, a mouth to feed, a problem to be solved, where her mother's sacrifice would become a footnote, a sad story, nothing more. That wasn't right. He knew it in his bones, the way he knew weather, the way he knew when a horse was about to spook. Some things you feel before your mind catches up. She belonged here, with him. Not because he deserved her, not because he'd earned her, but because she'd walked through a blizzard and found his light and asked if it was heaven, because she'd made him smile, because she'd made him want to live. The moon rose while he stood there, full and yellow, turning the snow to gold. He watched it clear the eastern peaks, watched the shadows shorten and sharpen, watched the world transform from silver to amber like something out of a story. Mary used to say the full moon was God's nightlight, said he left it burning so the lost could find their way home. Silas had stopped believing in God the night his family burned, stopped believing in anything but the weight of his own guilt and the slow crawl of days that wouldn't end. But standing here now, with the moonlight on the snow and the wind in the pines and the 2 graves at his feet, he felt something stir, not faith, not exactly, but something close, something that might grow into faith if he let it, if he stopped being scared. I'm going to keep her, he said, to Mary, to Eli, to God, if he was listening. I don't know how. I don't know if I'm allowed. But I'm going to try, because she found me. Because she asked if this was heaven. Because his voice broke. Because I can't bury another child. I can't put another cross on this ridge. And if the sheriff wants to take her, he'll have to go through me. The wind dropped. The pines went still. For a moment, the whole world held its breath. Then, somewhere in the valley, a coyote howled, long and lonesome and alive. Silas turned toward home, toward the cabin, toward the girl, sleeping by the fire, with a cat named Bishop, and a heart full of love, with nowhere to go. He had somewhere for it now. He pulled the 3rd cross from his pocket. He'd kept it, after he tore it from the ground on the ridge. After Eliza asked why there were 3, and he couldn't lie to her, he'd kept it. Carried it in his coat, like a talisman, like a reminder of who he'd been. Now he looked at it in the moonlight. A small thing, really, just 2 pieces of wood nailed together. He'd made it the same day he made the others, planning to fill in his own name when the time came. The time that never came. He walked to the wood pile, set the cross on the chopping block, picked up the axe. 1 swing, clean, the cross split into 2 pieces, then 4. He gathered the fragments, Carried them inside, fed them to the fire. Eliza stirred on her pallet, opened her eyes, watched the wood catch, the flames rise, the cross become ash and light. What was that? Nothing. He sat in the chair beside her. Just something I didn't need anymore. She looked at him a long time, then smiled. Small, sleepy, real. Good. She closed her eyes, settled back into sleep. Silas watched the fire burn, watched the last pieces of his death wish turn to ember and smoke. Tomorrow the sheriff would come. Tomorrow there would be decisions, but tonight he was ready. The sheriff came at dawn. Silas was waiting on the porch. He'd been up since before first light, shaved for the first time in months, the blade scraping through a beard he'd let grow wild, revealing a face he barely recognized. Younger than he'd expected, older than he'd hoped. He found his only clean shirt at the bottom of the chest, pressed flat under winter blankets, put it on, buttoned it to the collar. Eliza watched from the doorway while he dressed. You look different. Clean, you mean? No. She tilted her head, studying him. Ready. You look ready. He didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Just pulled on his boots and walked out to meet whatever was coming. The sun broke the eastern peaks as Cole's horse emerged from the tree line. Same bay mare, same press coat, same badge catching the light. But something in the sheriff's posture had changed. Shoulders tighter, jaw set, the look of a man who'd made a decision and wasn't happy about it. Silas stepped off the porch, stood in the snow, waited. Cole reined up, didn't dismount. Morning, Silas. Emmett. I've done my thinking. And the sheriff looked past him to the cabin, to the window where Eliza stood watching, Bishop in her arms, her breath fogging the glass. And I spent half the night going through territorial statutes, talking to Judge Whitmore over the telegraph, writing letters I'll probably regret. He paused. You're not making this easy. Wasn't trying to. Cole dismounted, tied his horse to the rail, climbed the steps until he stood eye to eye with Silas, or as close as a man of average height could come to eye level with the giant of Cedar Valley. The law says she goes to Helena, orphan train, processing, placement with a suitable family. He held up a hand before Silas could speak. The law also says exceptions can be made, in cases where a child has already formed a bond with a potential guardian. In cases where removal would cause undue harm, hope flickered, dangerous, fragile. The same hope he'd felt 2 days ago, before Eliza told him about the coat, before he walked to the ridge and burned his death wish. What are you saying? I'm saying there's a process. Paperwork, a home inspection, character witnesses. Cole's voice was flat, official, but something underneath it cracked. I'm saying, if you want to keep her, you're going to have to earn it. Prove you're fit. Prove you can provide. Prove you're not just a broken man looking for something to fill the hole. I am a broken man. I know. The hole's still there. I know that too. Silas looked at the cabin, at the window, at the small face watching them with one good eye and one clouded. But she's not trying to fill it. He stopped, searched for words he didn't have. She's making a new hole, her own hole, beside the old one. And maybe that's better than trying to patch what can't be patched. Cole stared at him, long and quiet, the look of a man seeing something he hadn't expected. That's the most words I've heard you string together in 20 years. Been saving them up. Almost a smile crossed the sheriff's face. Almost. There's one more thing. What? You'll need to come to town, both of you. File the paperwork in person. Answer questions. Let people see her. See you. Cole's voice hardened. Martha Harker's been talking. Half the valley thinks you kidnapped that girl. The other half thinks worse. If you want to keep her, you're going to have to face them. Face their judgment. Let them see you're not what they think. Silas felt the old anger rise. The hot, tight feeling that used to come before he swung at something. I don't care what they think. You better start caring, because Judge Whitmore cares. The territorial board cares. And if they hear stories about the crazy hermit in the mountains keeping a child against her will, it's not against her will. I know that. You know that. She knows that. Cole jabbed a finger toward town. They don't. And they won't believe it until they see her stand up in front of God and everyone and say so herself. Eliza was waiting inside when he came back in. She'd put on the makeshift dress, his old shirt, cinched with rope, and tried to comb her hair with her fingers. Bishop wound between her ankles, meowing for breakfast. What did he say? Silas sat down at the table. His legs felt hollow, his chest felt full. He said there's a chance, a real chance, but we have to go to town, file papers, let people see you, answer questions. What kind of questions? The kind that decide whether you stay or go. She climbed into the chair across from him. Her good eye was bright, fierce. What do I have to say? The truth, that you want to be here, that I haven't hurt you, that... He stopped. Looked at his hands. Massive things. Hands that could break a man's jaw, or gentle a spooked horse. Hands that had held her while she cried for her mother. That you want to stay with me. That's easy. She reached across the table, put her small hand on his. I've been saying that since the second day. I know, but now you have to say it to strangers. People who don't know you. People who might not believe you. He met her eyes. Can you do that? She didn't hesitate. I walked through a blizzard, Silas. I watched my mama die. I found your cabin and asked if it was heaven, and you smiled at me. Her chin lifted. The same stubborn angle he'd seen when she argued with him about the cat's name. I can talk to some strangers. They rode into Cedar Valley that afternoon. Silas on the old gelding, grandfather as Eliza had named him. Eliza in front, wrapped in his coat, her small body pressed against his chest. The road was mud and slush, the snow melting fast under a sun that felt almost warm, spring coming early. Like the world knew something had changed. Town looked the same as always. Wooden storefronts lining the main street, church at one end, saloon at the other. The general store, where Martha Harker held court and collected gossip, like other women collected recipes. People stopped and stared as they rode in. Silas felt their eyes, heard their whispers. The giant of Cedar Valley, come down from his mountain. And a child with him, a girl. Where did she come from? Who is she? What's he doing with her? He kept his back straight, his eyes forward. Let them look. Eliza waved at a woman on the boardwalk. The woman didn't wave back. They're staring. Let them. They look scared. They're not scared of you. I know. She twisted to look up at him. They're scared of you, but they shouldn't be. You're not scary. I'm 6.5 feet tall, and I haven't talked to most of them in 15 years. That's plenty scary. And you talk to me. You're different. How? He thought about it. Really thought. You asked if this was heaven? Most people, they see me, they think the other direction. She laughed. Small and bright, cutting through the whispers and the stares like sunlight through cloud. They stopped in front of the sheriff's office. Cole was waiting on the porch. Reverend Price stood beside him, thin, gray, with eyes that had seen too much and judged too little. And beside the Reverend, Martha Harker, arms crossed, mouth already puckered with disapproval. Silas dismounted, lifted Eliza down, held her hand as they walked up the steps. This her? Martha's voice was sharp, suspicious. This the orphan girl? This is Eliza. Silas kept his voice level. And she's not an orphan anymore. Is that so? Martha looked at Cole. Sheriff, I don't see how this is proper. A man like him, living alone all those years, suddenly claiming a child. The child can speak for herself. Reverend Price's voice was quiet but firm. If we're going to discuss her future, we should hear from her, don't you think? Everyone looked at Eliza. She stood straight, shoulders back, one good eye bright, one clouded, both fixed on Martha Harker with a steadiness that made the older woman shift her weight. My name is Eliza Ann. My mama died 3 weeks ago. She gave me her coat so I wouldn't freeze. And she told me to find the light. I found it, and she pointed at Silas. He saved my life. He fed me and kept me warm and read me stories and never once asked for anything back. He's the best man I ever met, and if you try to take me away from him, I'll walk right back through whatever blizzard I have to. Silence. Martha Harker's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. Reverend Price smiled, small and quiet, like he'd just witnessed something holy. Sheriff Cole cleared his throat. I think that settles that. He looked at Silas. Paperwork's inside. Let's make this official. Silas nodded, squeezed Eliza's hand. She squeezed back. They walked inside together. Spring came to Cedar Valley, and the cabin wasn't silent anymore. Silas noticed it first in the mornings. The sounds that used to wake him, wind through the chinks, the creak of settling timber, the vast empty quiet of a house with only one heartbeat, had been replaced by others. Eliza humming while she fed Bishop, the horses nickering when they heard her voice, pots clanking as she tried to make breakfast, burning the oatmeal more often than not, but refusing to let him help. I'm learning, she'd say, scraping char from the bottom of the pot. Mama always said you gotta burn 100 meals before you cook a good one. Your mama ever burned the cabin down? Only twice. He'd laugh. Still surprised him every time, the sound of his own laughter, rusty and strange, but real. The snow retreated up the mountains, leaving mud and new grass behind. The river broke free of its ice, running fast and cold with meltwater. Crocuses pushed through the brown earth near the porch, purple and white, the first color he'd seen in months that wasn't snow or sky. Eliza found them one morning, knelt in the mud, heedless of her dress, and touched the petals like they were made of glass. Look, Silas. They made it. Made what? Through the winter, they were under there the whole time, waiting.